Hey, Panthers. All right, today we are carrying on talking about industry during the Gilded Age, the late 1800s in American history when the robber barons are about and industry is booming and the United States is becoming this economic superpower. For the most part, life in the United States for most Americans does improve during this time. The standard of living improves, wages improve. So, for the most part, people are benefiting. But the people who work in the factories, who work for Carnegie and work for J.D. Rockefeller and work for the other robber barons, these people, their lives are horrific during this time. So in 1880, there's a momentous shift that takes place in American society. For the first time in 1880, there will be more industrial workers than there will be farmers. For the first time, there are more people in the cities than live in the rural areas of the United States. And there's a couple of reasons for this. Farmers traditionally had, farming families traditionally were very, very large. They had lots of kids. The primary reason was the more farm hands you had, the more workers you had, right? The kids would go out and work. Well, after the Civil War, because of farming techniques and new inventions and better farming implements, there was less need for lots of kids on the farm. So all of a sudden, these kids who are living out on these farms, they have nothing to do. They have no reason to be there. Meanwhile, in the cities, where they are manufacturing these new and improved farming implements, better plows, and so on and so forth. The factories are making lots of product. So the young people who are living in the rural areas who would ordinarily be working on the farm now go to the cities to get jobs in the factories. So there's this relationship between the city and the rural areas and the farms and the factories that is very much reliant upon each other. There's fewer people in on the farms because there's more people needed in the cities. Um, so back and forth. So for the first time, there's this big shift that takes place, and that number will continue to grow from that point forward, including today. There's a lot more people that live in the cities than live in the rural areas of the United States. Now, in the factories, working conditions were extraordinarily dangerous, if not deadly. There were no laws to protect workers. There was no minimum wage standards. There's no minimum hour standards. So workers are working all the time and they get very, very tired. And when you get very tired, you do reckless things. You're not paying as close attention and accidents happen. And the working conditions, just in general, were not very safe. There was nobody coming in to make sure that the machine was running the way it was supposed to work, and so on. And workers worked all the time. On average, they worked 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. That's on average. It was not uncommon at all for workers to be working 15, 16 hours a day. They worked 7 days a week. There's no such thing as weekends. Weekends are just another day. And they worked 363 days a year. They didn't get time off, and they didn't get breaks, and they didn't get lunches, and they didn't get any of these things that we get today. The attitude was you work 12 hours a day, that means you've got 12 hours left in the day to sleep and do whatever it is you need to do. Don't talk to me about you need a lunch break or you need a dinner break. You've got 12 hours to eat. If you take a break, that means you're not working. And if you're not working, the factory's not making any money. Don't ask for a vacation. We give you 2 days off a year, and you should be happy about that. So, what are the 2 days off that they got during the year? Well, they got 4th of July off. Woohoo! And Christmas. Those were the only 2 days that you could expect to get off during the year. And be happy you got them. And make sure you're at work all the earlier the next day. Most factory workers are earning about $1.50 a day. $1.50 a day for working 12, 14, 15 hours. Oh, 1900 just to get by the bare minimum. So you have some semblance of a roof over your head and something of food on your plate and some threads of clothing on your back. Just a very, very, very bare minimum. Just to get by, you needed to make about $600 a year, just bare minimum. Most factory workers are earning less than $500 a year. They're not even making enough to barely get by. Oof. So, so what do we do? How does this work? How do we fix this? Well, very often these are the people that work in the factories. You brought your kids to work. It wasn't enough just for mom and for dad to work. You needed kids to work. And by 1900, there are 1.7 million children working in factories. There's no laws stating that they couldn't. There were no minimum age requirements. Mom and dad needed you to work because that brought more money into the household and helped pay the bills. And factories were more than willing to let kids work because they could pay kids less. Kids weren't adults. We could pay them less. And so you can see some of the jobs that these kids did in the factories. These are a bunch of coal miners, probably 11, 12 years old, and they're in a coal mine working hard mining work. And they probably just got done doing a 15, 14, 15-hour shift. This girl works in a textile factory where they make cloth, and you can see some of the bits of cotton and yarn on the floor around her. This kid here, he's basically digging through a trash pile, looking for anything of value in a trash pile that he could go pawn or go sell for some money. And then these are just a bunch of girls who go to work in a factory, and they're probably 14, 15 years old. Check out this chick here. Oof, that is one unhappy woman. Whoa. Another thing that a lot of companies did to get away with paying such low wages is that they would have their factory workers live in company towns. Company towns are exactly what it sounds like. It is a town owned and controlled by the company you work for. The house, if you were lucky enough, or the apartment, more than likely, that you lived in was owned by the factory. So you paid them rent. The store that you would go shop at was owned by the factory. Everything that you went and did in this town was owned by the factory. Now, this picture here is a picture of a factory town in Colorado, in a mining town in Colorado in the 1920s. And this is actually a pretty nice factory town. Most of them don't look this nice. So everything you went to, everything that you bought, everything that you spent money on, everything was owned by the factory. So they set the prices. And you were paid in company script. You weren't paid in American dollar bill, y'all. Oh, nay, nay. You were paid in company script, which was money printed by the company. Guess where the company script could only be spent? You could only spend it in the company town. You couldn't go outside of the company town and try to spend company script because it wasn't any good. It was only good in the company town. And that's how you got paid every single week, was in company script. So essentially, you're working for nothing. You're working for free because this company script is about as good as monopoly money. And prices in the company town were higher than they would be in other places because the company can do that. They have that ability because there's nowhere you can go. And so very often, here's what would happen. You would go to the company store to buy your groceries. Let's say you get paid $50. and rent is $25. So you've got $25 left over. You go to the company store to buy your groceries for the week, and it comes out to be $30. Well, you don't have enough. The company store will say, "Oh, don't worry about it. We'll credit you that $5. We'll just take it off of your next check." Oh, okay, that's okay. I can do that. My next check instead of $50 will be 35. Fine. Next check comes, $45 check. Rent is still 25. So now you're down to $20. You go to the company store and your bill comes to $30. We only have 20. Don't worry about it. We'll take it off of your next check. So your next check comes and you get $40. And it just goes on and on and on and on until eventually you owe the company money. You're working because you owe them money. You're not getting a paycheck anymore because you owe that money back to the company. And now you just go further and further in debt. And because there's no safety standards, if you were killed or permanently injured, like both your legs ripped off or something like that, the worker and his family had to leave the town immediately because they would have another family and worker and family come in and take your place. So you had to go. Oh, by the way, make sure you pay your bill on the way out of town. Very often, the people that worked in these factories and lived these lives were immigrants. This is a period of enormous immigration into the United States. There are immigrants coming to the United States from all over the world, mainly China and at this time Southeastern Europe. And they're coming here looking for a better chance and a new tomorrow. But there's enormous prejudice and enormous bigotry towards the immigrants. So the immigrants have a hard time finding work and finding somewhere to live. And very often, the only place they could get a work and the only place they could find a job were in the factories. And those are our notes for today. Make sure you turn in your notes for this. Make sure you take you send them to me so you can get credit for the notes. Next time, we'll talk about the immigrants coming into America and what they were like and what their lives were like and what kind of prejudice they experienced in the United States. So, until next time, take care, Panthers.